too bad
All right.
yourself.
Fucking fantastic. Making money.
Doing
That's
good.
awesome.
Yeah. I just want to quickly clear the air and say that things might have got a little heated in that conversation, but I hold no.
Oh no,
I hold nothing.
no! I just you probably misread what I said. We were just talking about it, but we'll talk about it now because it's the Villains Talk Show.
I figured out why I misread it. You didn't put in commas. You needed commas.
I did need commas, but it
needed
we
commas.
think we looked at what you said and we're like, that didn't make sense to what I was trying to say, and we're like, you probably just misread what I said, but it's fine because it's the Villains Talk Show, and I'm one of your hosts, C4, with special guest again, the elusive brother, who needs his own name at some point. The EB or something. The Ebb. The Ebb. The elusive brother. Ebb. We'll call you Ebb.
There you go.
Not the Ib.
Really weird.
I
don't
like
I was looking for like a better nickname than
Teb?
that, but
Teb. TEB.
No,
I
that's
don't know.
Well,
make your own name.
no, you
I
can.
know. Peaches.
Yes, I love it. Peaches.
No, I already know someone who goes by Peaches. And so do you guys,
I was
actually.
just like-
So what do you two go by?
What?
A lot of people just call me Wahlberg because I look like Mark Wahlberg's brother.
I was actually talking to my co-host, but that's a good one. I like Wahlberg.
I've also been known as Scoopy or Scoopy McGavin. These are names other people gave to me.
I think
myself, obviously.
I like Wahlberg. But also
All right.
with us today is the other two co-hosts.
I am C4.
Hi, I'm C3.
And I am C2. We are the Villains of the Villains Talk Show. It's nice to be back. How is everybody? Happy 420 if you're listening to this on Thursday.
Yay.
Oh wow, we already.
Who listens to the thing on Thursdays?
That's a good what? What? Who would? Why? Why wouldn't you listen to something on that?
You don't just turn off your ears on Thursdays?
Turn off your ear to Thursday? I'm
You
sorry.
don't just turn off your ears on Thursdays?
Is that something that the kids do nowadays?
No,
I
it's
do
something that the adults do. It's an old person thing.
Yeah.
Oh, I get it.
Like apparently,
You just-
You reach for your fucking hearing aid and turn it off on Thursday.
I mean, I started wearing earplugs on Wednesday, so
Is that because it's lots of loud things happen on Wednesdays?
yeah,
Huh.
yeah, they do.
Well, that's interesting.
Yes.
Anyway, today's topic.
Finding our voices in this modern age.
Yes.
I don't know what the topic is. No one told me anything.
No. I'm just here to collect a paycheck.
I mean, that's what the contract states. Yeah.
Well, I figured we could do two things. I guess with Wahlberg here, it might be a bit harder. Because last week's stream, my computer decided to break itself, so there was no audio. So we talked about the D&D movie to ourselves, essentially. So I thought maybe we could touch a little on that, and then we go on to the general topic, which would be the next generation.
Well, I got you. Knock knock.
Star Trek: The Next Generation.
Are you doing this again?
Yes.
Is it interrupting
knock
now?
knock.
Is it?
Yes.
Is he coming back?
Knock knock. Who?
Knock knock. Who?
Just shut up. I answered the question.
No, you didn't.
Interrupting cow.
Interrupting cow. Who?
Moo. I was
Oh,
hoping you would summon him again. I didn't send him any message this time. I was hoping he would just know.
Wait, Kate, MC3? MC2? Who dat?
You can receive one.
MC1? MC1? Are you acting like a pissed off girlfriend and expecting us to read minds?
No, I was expecting Mr. Insaniac to read minds and show up.
Oh.
Because
Yeah.
that's what crashed the computer last week.
Oh, you done fucked up then, sir.
He can't read minds, or he's not going to show up.
if you ever want Insaniac to do something, he'll do the opposite.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Just be like, don't enchant this item with something useless.
and then, well, fuck you too. Look at this useless item.
I mean, last week it worked. It got him to appear.
That's true.
I mean, the
But
first
no
time
one
you
would
guys
know
had me
because
on,
the stream
I think
crashed.
we were talking about him, and he just showed up randomly. So maybe he just felt his ears were burning or something.
You know, that's fair enough, man. But to get this ball rolling, I guess a bit. Have you seen the D&D movie, Wahlberg?
Of course I have.
So let's because the whole stream got crashed last week. Let's just start with 5 minutes of that.
All right.
Because I'm gonna go. I have tickets to the Underground Film Festival here that I'm going to all week. So I'm gonna be seeing a lot of different movies. But I was talking about how one of the we rated it. I think both these two gave it like an 8 out of 10. I gave it a 7 out of 10. What's your quick rating of it?
4 out of 10.
What?
It just didn't live up to my expectations in the sense that the characters that were a mutual friend of all of ours did a pretty accurate assessment where all of the characters skill dumped into charisma, even though it didn't make sense. And from a min-maxer standpoint, yeah, what the fuck, guys? That barbarian shouldn't have been able to convince the executioner not to execute them. The realism just wasn't there for me, that's all.
Fair enough. I just thought it was fun.
Lucky
so-
rolls are lucky rolls.
That's true.
But given the other attempts at Dungeons and Dragons, this one did it honors as the other ones were just like, what the fuck is this?
Did you catch the Easter egg of the original D&D party?
No.
In,
Well, maybe.
in the maze,
Probably not.
when they're in the maze with the other party. You ever watched the cartoon when you were a kid?
No.
Ah, okay. That was one of my favorite Easter eggs.
Fair enough. But I think it went straight over my head because, how I got into D&D is very different than how a lot of other people did.
I think they did the mimic dirty. They did the displacer beats good. That was a good scene.
I did.
Wait, you're saying you weren't kidnapped and brought to a random apartment and then forced to play D&D?
Is that how you think I started?
That's how I started.
Oh.
What?
Well, and now look at you. You're thriving and thriving on the D&D every single day.
Who kidnapped you?
Andrew.
I was gonna say it's probably Andrew.
That makes some sense.
That's okay. Jeremy promised me beer and hanging out, and then I went over to his house, and there was Andrew and Kara, and we played D&D. That was how I got into D&D.
I mean, I literally met him in a dark tavern.
Hey.
In a tavern. You know how
It was dark at the time, the lights were not all on. He was sitting in a corner
context.
and everything.
So he was like Strider from Lord of the Rings,
It
how
was-
he met the Fellowship.
Yes.
You know what's even
Yes, that is
funnier?
legitimately how we met your brother.
Is that was in my tavern too.
Yes.
So it's just
Oh, you're the owner of the Prancing Pony?
I
That's pretty
technically
cool.
was, yeah.
In this story, yes.
Yeah.
We all have.
Oh, you cut out.
Oh, somebody texted me. We all have humble beginnings, don't we?
I don't know, it felt very appropriate.
Well, the way I started D&D is that Jeremy was like, "You'll love this," and then he was my DM, and then he let me play 2 characters at the same time. And we played 2, and it was just a one-on-one. It was very lackluster, but I could see the potential for abused imagination. And the min-maxer in me was born.
How old were you at the time?
Oh, fuck, that's hard to say. I was like, well over 13.
Okay.
Yeah, and I was a very much a power gamer at that time, too, because I was just like, why wouldn't you be the strongest person in the game? That doesn't make sense to me. You want to win, right?
I just always went into D&D with the idea of being the dumbest character.
And you know what's
Not
funny about
mentally
that is
dumb,
I
just the dumbest character.
was talking to one of my coworkers about like my D&D group and like my old D&D group versus my now D&D group. And like my old group, we were all fucking min-maxers. There was only one RPer amongst us, right? And then I'm like sort of trying to adapt to just a shitload of RP players with like the exception of Dresden who just wants to kill shit.
Yep.
But yeah.
Pretty much.
And like it was hard at first. I won't lie to you guys. Like, it was really fucking hard because I was like, it took us 3 weeks to get out of like one town. You
Yeah,
guys are too busy.
I think that annoyed all of us. It's okay.
Yeah, that's actually pretty average.
No. That was like Andrew levels of bad. We
that
haven't been that bad in a while. So
Yeah, that was bad.
it got so
How
bad.
long did it
Chuck
take us
started
to
doing
get-
crazy things.
It got bad
I had-
because Chuck started doing crazy things.
I had to see you guys at your worst to be worthy of being there at your best. You know what I mean? So like, I'll be honest with you guys. In the beginning, in the first few sessions, I seriously, and I mean seriously, considered saying like, fuck this party. And I don't mean that like in a hurtful way or anything like that. It's just the honest to God truth, right? And that's because I was
Well, you
used
meant it
to a
in the
certain
kinky way.
style where we just murdered hobo the shit out of everything, right? And then I came to realize that I needed to be more accepting of your play style instead of trying to impose mine on everybody else. Simply because I wasn't used to the new experience or the new play style didn't make it wrong. You know what I mean? And I'm glad I stayed because I love this group now. Your RP gives me stories to tell to my coworkers who are into D&D. By far in this group, and I hate to disappoint y'all, is Chuck. Everybody loves Chuck. Chuck's the man.
Does everybody love Chuck?
They do, yeah. They love and hate him because they realize that like he's the bane of our existence. He's the one who gets us in trouble all the time. But he's also because he gets us in trouble all the time, he's also the most interesting character in the world. You know what I mean?
Fair enough.
And he thinks
Well,
he's
I'm
the
very
chosen
glad
one.
that you decided to stay around.
Me too.
You let your ego too much, they're gone.
Oh, it's how because that's the best thing about D&D is I have to restrain my ego all the time, and so with D&D, that's the one thing I never let go, or I never rein in. With my last character, with every character I've ever played, Zach, if you played with me for the last 10 years, every character has an immense ego because that's just who I am, and so
Right?
it has to
And, like, you're
work into my
channeling,
character. Yeah.
You're channeling your inner you into your characters, and I've done that with all mine. That's why I'm a min-maxer and I fuck shit up. That's who I am at heart. Is I want to fuck shit up in life. Anything I do in life, I want to be the best at it. Right? That transfers into my D&D character. I recognize that.
There's a
So I can't
Pokemon
fault
D&D where you could be Ash Ketchum.
I believe it.
I just imagine I'd play that with you, and every game I'd start with the theme song too. He's gonna be the very best, like no one ever was.
And that makes sense. Like, so I'm happy that I let things go through their natural courses, right?
You
'Cause I
stuck
think
with
I would have really missed out if I bounced out because you guys weren't killing enough shit for me. You know what I mean? And I can see that Jeremy is trying to
make us kill stuff.
Yeah, he's trying to accommodate me too, and I can appreciate that. I'll get to kill stuff. He's just worried that if I don't kill enough stuff, I'll start killing you guys.
That's fair.
Well, I
That
have no
only
reason.
happened once last time.
I legitimately have no reason to kill any of them. Even if I found out that Felon has been selling my kin's souls to his god, I still would be like, yo, I'm an orphan. Why the fuck do I care? You know what I
He
mean?
hasn't been, by the way. Yet. His
No,
sister
not at
probably
all.
has.
Yeah. We don't know that for sure.
I would never.
You don't know for sure, but even if I found it out to be like factual and actual and irrefutable, still my character would be like, I mean, okay, I'm the only one of me I've ever met, so why the fuck would I care?
There's a solid chance his sister had actually attempted to sacrifice my brother. It's
Well,
great.
it sounds like
Allegedly.
you and your husband in game have some seriously. You guys need to see some counselors or something. 'Cause
Yeah.
Some fucking
We're trying.
Right?
That being all right. So I guess let's because we did start a bit late, but let's move on to our main topic of the night. The next generation.
Which one?
Yeah. TV show? Like, what are we?
Well, obviously Star Trek.
Yeah, that was my first thought too.
No. Well, I mean, we can if we want. The original topic was talking about. It's I like it because I like thinking about the future in perspective. One thing as a science fiction / horror writer is I often like to dream about the future, and I like to amass knowledge, especially from history and science. And when I write science fiction or when I imagine it, I like to. It's a common exercise for me to fathom the future and what the future will hold. And this is why I always thought I was going to go into political science and think tanks, because I used to love to predict political science. And I have a really good track record. And so
Let's be thankful you didn't, because you wouldn't have a job right now.
I predicted Trump. Are you kidding me? If I'd be on TV, trust me. I predicted a few things that blew my professors away. But that being said, I have written records of that too. But that being said, I think it's more that, like, so when we talk about the next generation, it's fun to think about like 2 or 3 generations from now, which a generation is usually around 45 to 50 years. Which is so puts us about 100 years from now.
Isn't a generation like 15 years? Like the people who are in your generation, people who are approximately 15 years.
Generational wave? You're thinking about the when the next generation is born.
Yes.
Because
What are you thinking about?
generational control. So when I'm thinking about demographics more than...
Okay. We just need to define things.
Yes, perfect. So I'm thinking about in demographics. So usually a generation in demographics is basically anyone between the ages of 25 and 55 are usually the dominant generation. Whatever mix of generations that is. And so when you think about in that demographics, when you look at 2 generations ahead, you would basically say those 25-year-olds go to 55, and then those 25-year-olds go to 55, which puts us at 60 years. 60 years down the line.
50.
50, 60. Yeah, okay. Yeah, 50. So it's interesting to think about what's the world really going to look like 50 years from now. Because you have to consider a few things. Xi Jinping and Putin will be dead. There's no way they'll both be over 100 years old. So you have 2 major power vacuums you have to fill in your head. You also have to fill in the fact that cryptocurrency on its general trend is being lost in faith. And the thing that's been replacing it is basically digital credit. And so I've seen, and everyone has seen, especially in first world and now in second world countries, the end of cash. And so the next thing I look at is, okay, so if cash is a dead business, what does that mean? And then the final thing I look at is what Wahlberg brought up earlier, which is the social demographic, which is what is going on in the world and how is the pendulum swinging? Because as you look historically in humans, especially over the last 3,000 years, the way that humans work is everything's in a pendulum. Everything will swing to one way, whether that means complete control to complete freedom. And it swings back and forth until it eventually meets a middle point with most issues. That's how humans work. Is eventually you'll have the pendulum at one point, you'll have a bunch of people on this side who will push the pendulum back. And then it'll sit there for a bit, then it will go back. And that's just how humans work. So where's the pendulum today, and what is the pendulum focused on? The biggest debate, obviously, is gender and sexual politics. My belief is it'll be so ubiquitous by the time it hits, and this goes into what I actually believe about those topics. My belief is in social, what now is focused on gender politics, my belief is that won't be the focus. Something that probably would be the focus, I believe, especially at that point, will be looking at social if everyone knows what a Nexus passport is, or a European passport. A Nexus passport's like a North American passport, or a European passport's just a passport for Europe. I think what the problem's going to be is you're going to see a general degradation of national identity for continental identity. I think you're going to see continents on themselves are going to form more of an identity than nations, and nations are going to be treated more like states, as seen in the United States. And I think in 50 years, you're going to have people who, like in France, consider themselves more European than they would say French. And I think you're going to see basically a melting of old dynastical national lines as language itself becomes more ubiquitous. To that same point, I also believe in terms of technology, just to finish my point, I also believe that you're looking at technology and where would technology be and what does that mean for the world? Will the internet be given as an actual utility? I don't think so. I think private companies are going to fight for that to keep private for as long as they need it to be. The other question is, what I do think is, what about colonization? I think it'll become the Wild West for colonization in Mars. But that's just a personal belief. And with that, kind of laying out my beliefs of what I see the future going and the context of how I want to frame the argument, everyone else, take her away.
I mean, in terms of technology, you have to remember, everything you've learned up until this point is completely moot within 2 years.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter how much you learn unless you keep ahead.
So okay, put that 50 years from now.
I think it's going to be every month. Or every 2 months by then.
I don't know, because at a certain point, that's no longer sustainable for humans.
And that would be the point.
That's a good
The AI
point.
takeover.
You're assuming that's right. Are you? I didn't even think about it. You're with the AI adaptability just today. Looking at what AI is, who's assuming that it's humans doing the upgrading at that point?
True.
Well, you're assuming heavily that humans have been doing the upgrading till this point, but there's heavy evidence to show that since the 50s, we went somehow from black and white TV all the way to the microchip in 50 years. I don't think we did that unassisted. Call me crazy, but some outside force helped us make the few steps required to.
Well, there's definitely a
white TV.
No, there's definitely a lot of questions between the 50s and 70s in the certain leaps in technology. Like that's something that's been brought up many times with especially with computers, because Alan Turing's idea of a computer, although he was the one who made it and it was theoretically possible, his computer was the size of a warehouse. And then not 10 years later, they have one that's the size of an entire office building floor. You know, not small by any standard, but smaller than the original idea that Turing had. Like, in comparison to what Turing had, like, leagues smaller. And that's from 1949 to 1959. And then if you think, by 1969, the first home computers were being perfected. Like, that's a huge leap in technology in 20 years. So think about that in 50 years from today. That's 2000. What? That's 2073.
Yeah.
And they have microchips right now that are only a millimeter in size. So imagine a micro.
Have you guys heard about the science on solar flares and solar flares disrupting microtechnology?
Yeah.
Not microtechnology specifically, but technology in general, yeah.
Microtechnology specifically. I think it was, I want to say it was Toyota who was blaming solar flares causing their microchips in their cars to like, and this is during the, I think it was like 2014 Toyota Corolla recall. We had a massive solar flare, and they were saying that the solar flare caused the microtechnology, microchips, and their braking system to fail, and therefore their Corolla stopped braking when they were supposed to.
I
mean, it sounds like bullshit, but
no. That's true. That was a true thing. Right? But that the last reported incident of that was 2016. That's because microchips were about 3 millimeters in size or something, and so they reflected just a little too much light. And so now you get microchips. They have since 2016 there hasn't been one of those reported problem with solar flares and microchips. Because I remember being like 20, 22, 23 and hearing about that and being like, oh my god. But no, they've corrected that problem. But that is real. You can look that up.
And I agree with that, but I just like, as we get towards microchips and we slowly microsize our technology, we run into those problems that we never did before, right?
Oh, think about when we can nano-size technology and move. Like, okay, I'll tell you something. I've told it before on the show, but I don't think you've heard this. One of my favorite writers of all time, Zach. Or, sorry, yeah, whatever.
Okay, don't worry about it. Push forward.
You can look up his name. He's a Calgarian, actually. His name's Christian Bach. He's a writer. But he was given an honorary degree, biological doctorate from the University of California, because he figured out that he could take a gene and another gene and make them and like splice them together and make them reproduce, and it makes poetry. Technically, he's assigned every gene type with a different verse, and they constantly mate and reproduce, and those mate and reproduce, making new poetry. And then he released it out into the world. And so now these little tiny genes are everywhere. They don't do anything. They could be inside you, and they just reproduce and they make poetry.
Yeah, there's not a single ounce of me that's a poet, so I doubt I have any of those.
But if you look that up and just think about that, someone a fucking writer was able to gain enough knowledge on gene splicing to create his own little tiny amoebas that are unique and genetically unique, and wrote poetry assigned to each line of DNA and then let them out into the world to reproduce.
Fucking wild to me, because that would basically mean that there is no free will. You know what I mean? In the sense that everything's predetermined, our points of view, the way we see the world. Because poetry is an art form, right? And it's not like we talk about this in kitchen sciences, in the sense that cooking is an art form, whereas in baking is a science, right? Well, what you're suggesting essentially is that all humanity is we've been baked. We've been baked to do a specific thing, right? And we splice genes throughout thousands of years of breeding to make specific people. You know what I mean? So that would almost take away the fact that we have free will and that everything that we've done is predetermined, which almost would give...
But the only thing that prevents that is that you yourself can acknowledge that. Because you yourself can identify that, that gives you free will. If you did it, if you couldn't...
And it doesn't. It's talking about like the destiny conversation about every choice I make, despite the fact that I know I'm going to make it and that I have the right to choose one way or another. It doesn't matter. It's been predetermined, which almost would give credence
unless you
to
do
the
nothing.
God argument about how God has, even if you do nothing, that's been predetermined. You know what I mean? Because it's in your personality to do nothing, right? It's in your genes. We'd put personality aside, right? Personality at that point would be non-existent. We're all predetermined based on our genes. Every choice we make, every move we make is based on our genes.
And they'll
That's
be
a scary
watching.
thought, man. That's terrifying.
But your thoughts are still your own. Because you're having...
Unless they are.
Because you're having...
But
you do, because he's... in his context, in what Wahlberg just said, in the exact framework he put, he's having what would be considered by the thing that's controlling him as rebellious thoughts. And he's having them. He may not be acting on them, but he's having them. And by the act of having them, he's having rebellious thoughts, he's enacting his free will. He may not be doing it physically, but in the essence of him, that he can understand, because he can't truly believe that we're real. But he can truly believe that even though he's forced to do something, his thoughts are rebellious and free. He can always fall back on that.
That's terrifying. I feel like we should all take some mushrooms or some acid and have this conversation again, see where it goes.
It's basically saying that if you're right, if like in your context, if you're right, and everything you do is predetermined, everything, even if you stand there, then you can rest assured in that framework that you built, your thoughts, because you recognize what's happening, are rebellious and free. There is nothing that anything can do to restrain your thoughts.
Well, and that's the thing too, is like, maybe that's all predetermined too, in the sense that we based on our earlier discussion we had outside the podcast, we talked about God and religion and all that bullshit, right? So like, God had this plan for us, blah blah blah. If you believe in that, fucking maybe he knew, maybe the simulation argument's the right one, where we're all in a simulation. Everything we've ever done since the dawn of time has been done before and therefore predetermined and recorded, right? So nothing anybody do is actually individual.
One of my favorite arguments to the God argument is you've watched Rick and Morty, right? I'm sure a lot of our listeners probably have seen Rick and Morty.
Yeah.
Co-hosts, have you guys seen Rick and Morty? I'm sure.
Yes.
No.
We've spoken about Rick and Morty multiple times.
Yeah, I thought so. So this is mostly for the Viking then. So in Rick and Morty, for anyone who doesn't have seen it, there's a video game that Rick and Morty play sometimes. I forget the name of the game. But it's a simulation game. You put on a helmet and you just live the life of a regular person. What's the game called? Anyway, the point is you're living the simulation and you live and feel the life of this person, even though it takes place in
Roy,
that's right, the game of Roy. So you play as Roy and you live his life, and the point is to try and take Roy as far as possible. But in the game, when it shows them in the game, they don't realize who they are outside the game. They think they are Roy. And so, but everything Roy does is technically predetermined because it's controlled by the gamer. That's why when Rick plays, as opposed to Morty, which is what I'm getting to my big point as, Morty, when he plays the game as Roy, he's always lost as Roy. To go back to the Plato analogy, or to a Plato analogy, he's looking at the shadows on the wall, or to your analogy, he doesn't, everything is being controlled. He doesn't realize that he's just in a game. When it's Rick, and Rick goes in to play Roy and has that third eye and that consciousness knowing that he's just puppeting Roy, all of a sudden Roy itself, living vicariously through the idea that nothing he does matters, goes off grid and goes and does crazy things that the people in the episode would have never seen before. And I love that microcosm of the idea of knowing reality. And so it's also the idea of what is the nature of God. Because in Morty is a caring God, a young boy, who wants to see Roy succeed in a natural life and die a good life. When Rick represents the uncaring God, Pluto's uncaring God, and the same in Lovecraft, who's in the reality of things, though everything you do is predetermined, it doesn't fucking matter because you are meaningless.
there is that whole other episode where they play it again and Morty gets trapped in the system.
Oh yeah, and
and
the
he becomes
one.
everyone at the same time.
That is a good episode too.
I feel like that just like, and this is maybe just the way that my mind works, is that by explaining what you just explained, that just feeds into Rick controlled Buddy at one point, and Morty controlled Buddy at one point.
Mm-hmm.
The delineation, the separation between the two is the difference between separating realities, right? So when Rick controlled him, he was in one reality, in one predetermined outcome of events. And then when Morty controlled him, again, he was in a different reality. So that's when we get into the really messy conversation of, are there multiple realities?
I would get into that, but I think you missed what I was trying to say. I was trying to more point out to the idea of what is the nature of God then? Because the idea is, if Morty's the good God, in every time you see him play Roy has a good life. He has kids, he dies of natural causes. And then when Rick plays Roy as himself realizes that nothing matters and goes off grid and parties and does drugs and still lives a full life, but what people would consider a crazy life. But in the differences, the one that I tried to bring to light was, in the one instance, Roy doesn't know that Morty is playing. And in the other one, Roy realizes intrinsically that Rick is the god that Rick is chaotic, and so nothing matters.
And that's what I'm saying, is that maybe with different gods come different realities.
Well,
right? And in a sense, like we're looking at like quantum physics and like how the slightest minute details change the scope of history forever, right?
I'll leave, because we're running into time, so I'll leave you on this just for that. So on the idea of different realities, just chew on this, Wahlberg. Did you know that there are things called spheres and superspheres, and we are inside a supersphere? And in our supersphere, what defines our supersphere compared to other superspheres is the laws of physics that work in our reality only work in our supersphere. Our entire supersphere, which encapsulates all the galaxies and all the galaxies in the anti-galaxy within our scope of reality, use our laws of physics. And then there are other superspheres that we know of that do not use our laws of physics. They use laws of physics that do not work to us, but are true to them. And so does that constitute there are other gods with other realities?
And your idea of multiple realities, then why not the idea of multiple realities in the sense that in a separate reality, things don't work the way they do here? Like, why the fuck not? You know?
Why the fuck not? And with that, we're gonna end there because we are. Does anyone else have anything to say though?
I don't think so.
I think all I have to say is I'm sorry I dominated the conversation again. That's my personality. I'm a bit of a cunt in that sense, but sorry guys.
It is welcome and accepted.
Just this one time.
That's why, nope, all the time. That's why you're here, because we get tired of talking to ourselves.
Fair enough.
Exactly.
Have a great night, everyone. Thank you for watching the show.
Except for you. You know who you are.
Have a great night.
Except for you.